Hello and welcome to episode 115 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right, just a couple of regular dudes drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular, the online client MTG Arena.
That is right. And this week we actually just have a lot of news to share with you. So we will get to that in a moment. But first, each week we both bring a beer. We drink Jeff's, then drink mine, rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic, and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
Okay, I'm super excited this week. We are continuing our tap takeover of Little Beasts. So if you didn't listen last week, Little Beasts is a brewery that we are super excited about. We bought a bunch of them. Tap takeover means we'll be drinking these for a few episodes in a row. They're actually out of Whitby, which I knew last week, but I don't think if I mentioned, which is close to Toronto. This one that I've chosen is called the Rootless Tree. And this is a patter spear. So if you've never heard of a patter spear before,
I have not.
can't blame you. Here's what it is. So you know Belgian beers. You've
Hmm.
probably seen double or triple, like
Yeah.
Dubbel or Tripel, the Belgian versions of those things. A patter spear is a single. It's a Belgian single.
Oh.
They probably don't call it that because it's less appealing. I'm not sure where the name actually comes from, but it's a single. But the history or the alleged history of it is that, uh, like in Belgium back in the day, they made doubles and triples as the beer and essentially used the runoff. They didn't want to waste it. So they essentially made like weaker beer out of the stuff that they didn't keep from the doubles and the triples. And that was pattern spears or singles.
Okay.
So now it's like a style of its own where it's a Belgian single. But way back when 1300s or whenever these Belgian beers were being made, it was mostly like the cheap runoff of the original stuff that's still beer, but
Not what you're looking for. That's
yeah,
cool. I do think that's funny. Like, yeah, a single doesn't sound good in beer terms.
right.
But it does make me hope that like there's an artist one day who's going to release their single, but they call it like a Patters album or something.
Oh yeah. That'd be a
Uh,
joke very few people get, but
yeah,
I
but
would buy that album.
oh, that's great. All
Even
right,
showing my age there by talking about buying albums, but
yeah, yeah, that's true. But anyway, Jeff, let's crack open this rootless tree. Ugh, that makes it sound like there's like sap in it or something. Uh, anyway,
but I think there is a double or a triple. I can't remember in our batch, so I felt like starting with the single made some sense.
that's that makes perfect sense. And I learned something today because I did not look that up. Like I probably should.
You
Mm.
probably should look it up to fact check me. uh,
Just like everything that the arena
yeah,
regulars say,
this
you
could
might
be
want
like entirely wrong. It could be like some guy in the US called Patterson or something made
to,
up a
yeah,
beer style.
decided.
There's
Uh,
Patter's beer.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, talking about facts and checking, we have some magic news. This last weekend was Pro Tour March of the Machine in Minneapolis, and well, it was surprising. We're gonna get into that in a little bit because there is also a big announcement that happened during that Pro Tour, which is
Mhm.
that Standard is changing forever. Now, Mark Rosewater had talked about March of the Machine being like the set where Magic is going to change forever, and up until this point, for the most part, I was thinking that he just meant like there's a new card type, which was battles. I was like, okay, yeah, okay, sure, yeah. Magic's changed forever. There's a new
So
card
it's a
type.
little dramatic, but it's
Yeah, but
probably
like
true.
it's
Yeah, sure.
true. Yeah, it is changed forever. Um, now, standard is changing, and then there's another change that's happening as well, which we're going to get to. So, for the most part, they're all fine, but I think this is the one we might have the most gripes with. Um, now, standard, if you, I mean, I don't know if why you're listening to this podcast, you don't know what standard is, but standard is the like each set gets to live in standard for 2 years, basically. And rotation happens every September before the fall set comes out. And that just means all the sets from 2 years ago rotate out, and then you have the last year, and then so forth. Um, they are going to change that now.
Oh, wow. So they're going to change it to 1 year.
No, no.
No.
They're changing it to 3 years. So that
Hmm.
means that we won't get rotation this year. That in September, when Wilds of Eldraine comes out, there will be no rotation, which means before this, we were expecting both Innistrad sets, so Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, as well as Fable of the Mirrorbreaker set, and
Fable of the Mirrorbreaker dot set.
dot set. So Kamigawa and Streets of New Capenna, we're all going to rotate out. That's not going to happen, and we're going to have that chunk of sets for another year, which most notably means Fable the Mirrorbreaker is going to be around for an extra year in Standard, which I'm pretty sure everyone was kind of excited for it to kind of be gone, because, I mean, the majority of decks in Standard play that card. It dominated the Pro Tour top 8, like it's been dominating Standard. So, um, yeah, that's happening.
And the last piece of Magic news that we'll get to is March of the Machine, the Aftermath. In case you forgot, there is another product, and it's actually out, well, today at the time of this podcast. So it's been out. If you're listening to this, it's been out. Where you been?
Yeah.
Yeah, I stumbled upon that earlier tonight. So
There was some confusion. So I think the paper product comes out on the 18th. And this is a 50 card set with epilogue boosters. So this is just a way to wrap up the story of March of the Machine. And there was only 5 cards in each booster. That's for paper products. I'm not exactly sure how it's working with like Arena, if the booster packs are smaller or not. And there's also, you can like draft it as well, where they are adding some cards into the draft format. That's a separate draft thing, kind of like what they did with the alchemy thing. But um, anyway, uh, 50 more cards for standard. Oh yeah, they're standard legal, by the way. That's
yes,
important.
that's kind of the weird thing. It's like a
Yeah.
micro standard set, which they don't usually do. The micro sets are usually not standard legal. So
Yeah. But overall, I think this is pretty cool. I like that they have let themselves do this little thing, and it doesn't feel that weird. I was expecting it to feel like, oh, that's so strange that there's like extra cards for this other set that's coming out later after the set finishes, but it it actually doesn't feel that way so far. I mean, I haven't played with them yet because it just came out today and I just moved. If you can't see, I still have some boxes in the background of our YouTube video. So
background's totally different.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm in a new apartment completely. So, um, but yeah. So but I am excited to see how they work and all the things about them. And there's also some other crazy things that happened with the March of the Machine story, which we will talk about in a little bit. So that's going to be the episode. We're just going to talk about all these things. So buckle up.
And in that order.
Yes. Starting with the Pro Tour. Jeff, Pro Tour is this weekend. Did you get a chance to watch any of it?
Essentially, no. I watched an extremely small amount of it, like tuned in, just saw something, and then left. I don't think I watched an entire match of anything. I just kind of like got the feel for what was going on at different points in the tournament.
Yeah.
But that was it.
Mm-hmm. Same. I work the weekends now, so I just completely forgot. Also, my partner Catherine, she ran a half marathon on Sunday. So
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
congrats to her. That's amazing.
Yeah, she did really well. Like she ran it in an hour and 47 minutes, which is very good.
Yeah.
Under 2 hours is really good. So
Yeah, that's an actual time. A lot of the
yes.
time, like people are like, "Oh, I completed a marathon. It's like 3 hours." It's like that's
Mhm.
still great. Like
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, this was a half. So if you do a marathon in 3 hours, that's really
Sorry,
great.
sorry. I meant
Okay.
half marathon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was gonna be like, holy shit, that's a great time.
So yeah, I
Um,
did a marathon. It was like 2 hours.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like, whoa, that's
Oh,
slow.
oh,
Jeez.
geez. So anyway, so I was preoccupied with
21 kilometers for the
yeah,
listeners at home
yeah,
on a half marathon.
21.1.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
Yes.
sell it short.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, anyway, so I was a little preoccupied with that until I was going on Twitter and I was like scrolling, and then I was like, oh, all the top eight should be happening right now, and there was like a video with all like when you're watching football and they have like all the players be like, oh, this is my name and I'm from Texas A&M or whatever, yeah, and they do that. It was basically that for the top eight, and it was everyone saying their deck names. And I think they
Yeah.
put all the Rakdos mid-range players together because they were one after the other. It was like
Well,
Javier
it might have been by
Dominguez.
order. Like,
That's true. That does make sense.
yeah.
Um, it actually no, that's exactly right. Yes, it was in order because there's one in each of the quarterfinals.
So the fact that the Rakdos mid-range players were back to back, it's just that they were 1 through 4 in the
Hmm.
regular
In
standings.
the tournament, which is crazy. But important things to note for this, like Javier Dominguez got to the top eight, which is great. We haven't seen him up there in quite a while. Nathan Stoyer, who is very good at Magic. Holy shit, world champion, top
Yeah,
eights
no, it's just ridiculous at this point.
because like he top eights,
The last Pro
the
Tour,
last Pro Tour, loses to the winner, and then goes to this Pro Tour, top eights. And I mean, there's no spoilers in
spoiler
sports.
alert.
Nathan Stoyer won the Pro Tour. What the
Yeah.
fuck, dude?
How could anyone be this good?
Like,
The funny thing is, like, I was just kind of checking in on the tournament, right? And I
mhm.
checked in on like round 10 or no, it must have even been later than that. But it was LSV against Nathan Stoyer. They were both like 11-1 or 11-2. And my immediate reaction was like, Nathan Stoyer again? How fucking good is this person that they are just literally in contention in every major event ever? And then he
Yeah,
ends up winning. When I like tuned in later and saw that he won, I was just like, yeah, not even surprised at this point. Like,
yeah,
he's figured out something. He's figured something out that nobody else has figured out. Because at some point, variance has to get you, right? Like,
yeah.
unless you're just that much better than everyone.
Yeah, I think he's also really familiar with these like cards too, because like Rakdos mid range is fairly similar to the
He won
Grixis
with
mid range.
Grixis, yeah.
So like he's the best with a lot of these cards. And his team handshake has been like taking these tournaments by storm. They're like really a powerhouse. They're like the
But it's
team.
always
Him.
in big part because of him.
Yeah.
He's always done well.
So it's gonna be a crazy year if he
I
like
think he's like 20 or 21 or
yeah.
something.
So he's holy shit, Ethan. I'm gonna have to go back and watch some of those just to see him like
Yeah. I want
rip
to just go
people.
back and watch him play mid range because I have a lot of experience with mid range decks and just like mentally or even literally physically note down where he did something that I wouldn't have done.
Hmm.
Like, okay, at some point we got to start taking notes on what this guy's doing because like world champion, top eight pro tour wins and then wins the next pro tour
Yeah,
is like
it's
some old school like Kai
Guy
Buddha
Buddha stuff. Yeah,
stuff. Like nobody does that well anymore.
no. So insane. Congrats, Nathan. Can't even. I don't. It's just that's just nuts. I did also just want to give a quick shout out because this made me really excited, and then I jumped on to try to watch for a little bit because Autumn Burchett made the top eight, and that was very exciting. Um,
Yeah, I love to see that too. And as soon as I saw her deck list, I was like, I bet this is Zach's favorite deck of the
mhm.
of the top eight. So maybe of
Yes.
the tournament.
Uh, so she was playing Ords off mid range, which I just I just love I love seeing a deck that I didn't even like really expect to be like anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so that
And the deck
always.
is essentially mono white. It splashes black to shore up a few of mono white's weaknesses and also to
Mhm.
just play the busted card that everyone's like reaching for, the um breach,
Yeah.
breach the multiverse.
Mhm.
Which again is like insane in the mono white deck. So, and when
So
people are playing Atraxas and Atalis, it's just like that's their way of going over the top of mono white. And she can be like, haha, steal your Atraxa, steal your Atali. Like, I can keep up with you because of this card.
yeah.
I think it was a really interesting innovation.
So, and that's, Autumn has played some really interesting decks over the years. And it's.
Especially the past few events. Like she's never brought anything like I remember back in the day, like when she won and stuff, she brought interesting tech on
Mhm.
basically stock lists. Now it's like she's adding colors to stock
Mhm.
lists and like her decks are decidedly unique. Like last Pro Tour, I don't think she ended up doing that well in the limited portion, but her deck was
Mhm.
Mardu Sack. And the white she added to the classic red black sack deck like made so much sense when I saw the deck. It's like, oh, it's actually a really good idea. Like we get exile now.
Mhm.
Oh.
Mm. Yeah. So
Uh,
that.
or what was the card? The enchantment from Kaldheim that you draw the cards and you put the counters on everything. It's the saga.
Scald. The.
Yes,
Yeah.
something. This,
Of the
anyways, that was
Scalds.
her top end
Mhm.
of the sack deck. And I was like, that makes so much sense because you could play your whole deck over that, and like you get so many counters. Yeah, so
Yeah. Anyway.
if I was a Pioneer player, I would have immediately adopted that deck list.
Mhm.
Like
Showdown of the Skulls.
Showdown of the Skulls.
Okay, there
Thank
you go.
you. It's been so long since Kaldheim.
Yeah, I know. There will be more call time talk later in this episode because
Yeah.
there's just lots of stuff going on. But anyway, just with the focus on standard so much with this Pro Tour, um, they have made this huge announcement about how standard's going to be 3 years long now. And
Ooh.
a lot of you may be wondering, like, why would they do this? This seems so strange. Um, I know I was kind of one of those people. And
Mhm.
the reasoning behind it, the main reason is that if you want to play paper standard, it's very expensive to buy a deck for a short amount of time, 2 years or so, or even less. So they wanted to make the standard format last longer so that people would pay money and buy into paper standard and go back to local game stores playing standard specifically. Which, Jeff, how do you feel about this altogether?
All right. So I have like the angel and the devil on my shoulder, but instead of telling me good things to do, bad things to do, it's like my pessimistic side and my optimistic side. So I think the first thing you already called out is this change isn't necessarily directed at me as like an enfranchised player who likes standard and is already playing standard. That I'm not really the target of the change. Like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
target are people who feel uncomfortable investing in something that's gonna um, quote unquote be worthless in 2 years or
Mm-hmm.
certainly won't have the same value. So that's the angle they're taking. Now, the optimistic, the angel, is saying, look, they aren't idiots. They know that Standard's biggest problem is cards dominate the format and are around too long and they get stale. And they know that that's less than 5 cards. Like we're talking probably three cards, right? So the optimistic side of me is saying this is an investment or a bet on themselves. This is them saying, hey, we can keep that in check. Um, the
Mm-hmm.
pessimistic side of me is saying they can't keep it in check. if this doesn't look, if this isn't shortly followed by a Fable of the Mirror Breaker ban, then I don't know what they're doing. Because yeah, sure, you buy Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Oh no, it's rotated out of standard. I'm not like Fable of the Mirror Breaker is playable in Pioneer. It's playable in Modern. Hell, it's probably
Hmm.
playable older than that. It goes in Commander. Like nobody's buying Fable of the Mirror Breaker and then being like, damn it, it rotated out of standard. Now it's worthless. You know what I mean? So if they're not like balancing it, they're just exacerbating the problem.
Hmm.
And I don't know. Them making this decision is them saying, "Hey, we know that. Obviously, everyone knows that. Obviously, they know that." They're saying, "Hey, we can balance it." And the part of me that looks back on the data, the history, is like, "Can you though? Can you balance it?" But I think hopefully they're saying, "Hey, we always feel awkward banning stuff in a 2-year time span. Maybe it doesn't get its time in the sun. Maybe having the longer time horizon gets them a bit more comfortable with banning stuff. Like maybe they could just ban Fable when it ought to have rotated, and
That's
then they can
true.
feel okay with that.
That it got to have its 2 years and then it's banned.
I
Um,
mean, they should ban it before that, just to clarify. But at the very least,
yeah, it would
like,
be really nice if they did. Um, yeah, I
and this is
agree.
someone who loves Fable, by the way. Like, it's a card I play in almost every deck.
Yeah,
Um,
like
it's
and
my type of card. It's just too good. The
yeah.
the numbers are tuned too high.
Hmm. Um, I think the other thing that like isn't really directed towards you or I is that like this is specifically for paper magic. Like, obviously this has nothing to do with arena, uh, and well, it doesn't have nothing to do with arena, but it means like a lot of people are saying standard is an arena only format in the sense that no one wants to buy into it in paper, so they will only play it on arena, which in to me is fine. Like it doesn't bother
Yeah,
me at all. Um, having being able to play it on arena and then see what decks I might want to like buy and go to the local game store is something that is interesting to me. And so maybe if it's a longer time frame, that's a real possibility I could do. But in actuality, I'm sure that I'll probably just keep playing it on arena and won't really change my habits very much.
for sure. And that's their main like reason that they cited for the
Hmm.
change was local game stores are struggling to run standard events. Standard has always been the backbone of Magic.
Hmm.
Um, how do we fix that? It's like I'm kind of with you. I don't really see this. I just don't see standard going back to local game
Game
stores. Really,
stores.
like it's just it's so much more convenient to play it on Arena
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons, or even Magic Online. Like I see local game stores as just being a place to play some of the more like social formats
Not even
or
just, but like drafting. And I
or
guess
drafting.
if you
Yeah.
consider that social, but like drafting is really great at local game stores. Face to face here, they play a lot of Legacy. There are
Mm-hmm.
Pioneer Nights and obviously Commander stuff. But like offering standard, just it does seem kind of strange to me unless you're actually preparing for a tournament. Um, I don't completely get it, but they did have a couple other reasons. So they really had three main reasons why they did this, and it was kind of outlined in their article. The first one we touched on, which is it'll give it'll give current standard cards more longevity, which is obviously the longer time frame. The other
But
one,
everyone wants, right?
yeah, sure, because like you want the rotating format to like be in rotation longer. I guess I don't know. That seems kind of strange. The point is that you mix it up, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um, uh, they also cited that it will allow mechanics and archetypes to be more effectively built on over time, which
Okay.
so they were basically saying like in block structures before when they had three sets, they could introduce the mechanic and then slowly build on it and build on it until it kind of like kind of finished its design cycle. I don't think they're going to be doing this as far as the block structure goes, but do you think that means they're going to be like adding in mechanics and then like later coming back to them in later years, or like adding on to it at another
Yeah, I'm glad you
time,
brought
or
this up because I thought this was so ridiculous. Because basically their point here is like, oh, the reason standard is mid-range soup is
Mhm,
because we don't use block format, and so we can't build on a particular archetype. Moving to 3 years will help us be like color A, color B archetype decks. And I was like, are you kidding? It's going to be even more mid-range soup. Like the reason mid-range is good is that you get to take the best card from every set
mhm,
that's available to you and slap it together.
mhm,
Like, I think what they're thinking is, oh, modern has more formats and modern is way more linear. Like older formats are more linear. So
mhm.
pushing an extra year is going to be more linear. But like, unless you explicitly design it that way, that's not true. And I would argue that you could explicitly design it within a 2 year time frame as well. Like my go-to example is the party mechanic. You seeded the party mechanic to be this thing that would build over time, right?
Mhm.
And would, maybe it's not playable now, but it has a decent core. It's not quite there, but every set is going to add to it. And then maybe halfway through standard season, we'll get the party deck. Nope, party was just garbage the
Mhm. The
entire
whole time.
time. And an extra year would have done nothing
Yeah.
to that.
But it's
So
also that they like purposely made sure that that didn't happen by specifically changing card types in a D&D set so that I can't get
right.
back into that again, but like
But that's what I'm saying, right?
yeah.
Like those things weren't weak because standard was only 2 years.
No.
Those were explicit choices we made to make them weak.
Mhm.
Like,
And the two the these examples are pretty funny to me because the two examples that they had about decks that they thought would grow stronger over time
yeah,
were blue white soldiers, which well one of them um, made it to the top eight, so
top eight at the Pro Tour. Yeah,
that's great. Except for they just introduced blue white knights, and it's like great, thanks.
yeah.
Um,
Like,
okay, fuck. Oh, how is that going to help? And then the other deck that they wanted to make stronger was white green toxic, which I'm all for. But does that mean you're adding more toxic cards in the future? Are there going to be random toxic people on different planes?
are we
Because it's
maybe not gonna print in the very next set a card that hoses exactly
exactly
that
that.
deck?
Like you couldn't even wait until like the wilds of Eldraine or something, you know?
Like, how does any of this have to do with a 2 year cycle? These are all just design decisions.
Yeah. Like, are you saying that there's going to be toxic in like a set like a year and a half from now? Like, I don't understand how
No,
this
there's
is
no way.
helpful.
There's no way.
Like, I understand your philosophy. I just don't, your specific examples are bad, I think.
Confusing.
Um, yes, very confusing.
Maybe what they're saying is that like do they design a year out or 2 years out?
2 years
So
out.
maybe this is what they're saying, right? Because they design 2 years out, giving the third year to standard lets them actually react, sort of. Like you can release the first set and then standard isn't already decided
Hmm.
by the time the results of that first set are back. But they didn't explain it that way or explain that.
No, this
Um,
is just speculation that we're guessing that that is what's happening.
but that's the sort of only upside or like the only underpinning of what they're saying here that I could think of.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, it's like everything just seems like a design decision. If you want to print more toxic cards, you could have printed more toxic cards, like
Hmm. Yeah.
or like at the very least cards that are good in the toxic deck. You just chose not to, and I don't know why having 3 years would have done that. So it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
I think they definitely have to wield the ban hammer like a little more fluidly if they're now that they've made this decision.
Hmm. And so this is all interesting. Continuing to try to fix standard has been it's been really interesting to me because like all the approaches that they've taken haven't really seems to solve that issue. Alchemy is a great example because they kind of pitched it to us like it was fixed standard, and then they completely derailed it, or just they just changed it without really saying anything. And now they're deciding that Alchemy is digital first players format, which
Right.
yeah, totally, that does make a lot of sense. I wish that you had explained that that is exactly what it's going to be and not what I was hoping for it to be, this other thing.
Yeah, because they had a different goal in mind that didn't hit that, so they've retargeted it.
Exactly.
Um, we should.
But I was going to bring it up, but do you want to bring it up?
Okay, no, you'd say it then.
I was just going to say that until this moment, Alchemy and Standard have been tied together
Mhm.
where they both rotate at the same time in 2 year increments. So if you know something's illegal in Standard, it's illegal in Alchemy plus more. As of now, that is no longer the case. Alchemy will be rotating every 2 years, and Standard is continuing to rotate at 3. So this is going to be so confusing. It drives a huge wedge between these two formats, which, to be fair, is probably good. It's good to keep them separate.
I was
But
gonna say it's not confusing really. Just don't play alchemy.
yes,
Like, I mean, they have the data. I always say this, like, we can only speculate. They have the data. We know what we do. They know what everyone does.
but their data is skewed because every new deck you build and every new player who starts playing the game and gets all the things, those are all alchemy considered decks. When you like start a new deck, like the first deck that they open for you to build is alchemy, and a lot of new players don't know what the difference is, so they just build a bunch of decks and play on the play queues or whatever alchemy until they realize that that's not what they were wanting
Right.
or whatever. So
But
they purposely push it a bit. There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit.
right, that's what I'm saying. The data is skewed when they release it for us to view.
Hmm.
When it's them, it's their analysts. They
True.
know that. And they know they they have flags to they can tell which is which. Um Presumably, I mean, oh my God.
I just think that there's someone who like looks at a chart and like is, I don't know. It always seems like really stupid to me. It's like, of course, the default format is like going to be pushed a little bit. So like, I know it's not as popular as Standard because they've told us many times Standard is the format on Arena,
Yeah.
and but I think I always look at the alchemy numbers and think like, how high is that really?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's what they're showing us is skewed.
yeah.
What they're analyzing internally when they're coming up with their profit to produce for Hasbro and all that stuff. Like, I think they probably have a better idea of how many people are
Yeah.
actually playing Alchemy.
Because also, where are the alchemy cards for March of the Machine? Like, have they come out? Because like I haven't seen
Yeah.
anything about it. I just like maybe Aftermath is the new thing, and like I much prefer this, where it's
Yeah.
like use it sparingly. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
I don't really
There's just
we don't really need to get into it, but this is around the time when we start to see the alchemy stuff, um, and
it's
we
just
are
such an interesting time. So to me, this is for me personally, this is a bit of a death knell for Alchemy. It's like I probably wasn't really going to play it before.
mm-hmm,
Now it's just like, oh, I'm not going to play it now.
mm-hmm,
So what this means is there's an arena team that does alchemy, and there's like a standard team that does paper
mm-hmm.
and arena standard, and they're keeping those linked. But there's like an arena team that does
Does it?
alchemy. My best guess is basically the standard team was like, we got to do something, or the powers that be said you have to do something about standard. Nobody's playing it, and it used to be our money
Premier.
maker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the arena team was like, no, we've already mapped out this plan for alchemy. It's dependent on certain cards rotating out. Like, we would have to change all of our releases. Like, it's all
Yeah.
important. Like, no. And they were like, okay, it's not worth changing our next however many alchemy sets to
Sure.
make
Sure.
this
Sure.
change. Whatever, they're different now. Um, so
I don't
that's
know.
great for alchemy players, I think. Alchemy already has the weird problem that like good cards stick around too long and they are not wielding the banhammer as promised. Um, but standard, that's my like last vestige of hope here is they will feel more comfortable banning stuff
Mhm.
because 3 years is a long time for a card to be around anyways if it's really good and can see play in other formats and stuff. If that's
Yeah.
their actual goal is like people don't want to buy stuff because it's useless after it rotates, like then ban the stuff that's not useless after it
Yeah.
rotates.
But also, it's like people don't want to buy into cards that get banned, so they don't want to probably wield the band
But that's
hammer
what I
very
mean. If you
much.
buy like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and it gets banned in standard, is the price changing?
I think the price will change, but not by a huge more. It's not going to be like Rekindling Phoenix, which is like 80 cents
Right.
now
It's
or whatever,
not the usual problem of like there's a $40 card and now it's a $3 card.
or
It's
less.
like
Yeah.
this is a $40 card and now it's a $30 card, a
Hmm.
$35 card. It's like
Yeah.
not as
I.
big of a hit. You got your $10 worth of play out of the
Mhm.
time you got to play with it anyways. Like
It's true. I do think that like Fable is a hard example because that card's just so good. But there are some other cards like maybe Invoke Despair and things like that where you're just like, I don't know how expensive that card is right now, but you know, in any case, uh, I don't.
but
I wonder how much they will wield the band hammer. I mean, like wanting standard to be 3 years long, but also hoping that it's a little like swingy with the band hammer, maybe wishful thinking, just because like it kind of seems like the opposite of what they really want, which is people to play their cards more. But I
they
don't know.
want like let's assume they actually want people to buy cards, right?
Yes.
I buy a Rakdos deck. I don't have
Mhm.
to buy another card for 3 years. Is that what Wizards wants? Like
I mean,
they'll
no.
add maybe one or two cards per set, usually an uncommon that I'm interested
So
in.
like
Like they want churn
they
if they're trying to sell cards. I mean, I know they don't actually sell cards, which is like
the
the
weird thing
yeah, but
is.
they want cards in their set that people want so that stores buy a bunch of
Mhm.
those booster boxes, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. It's correlated.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Because also, obviously, stores aren't going to buy more of a set that they have way too much of, and well, whatever. Um, but I, that's what's weird about this though, is because we know they want us to buy cards, right? But now they're incentivizing us to, like, I don't have to decide, okay, I need to buy the standard deck right now because I can only play it for a certain amount of time. It's like, oh, I could,
hmm.
like, to me, I can put off buying that standard deck whenever I want. Like, it's still going to be around. Like, I can wait 6 months and then buy it if I want to. And if it isn't any good anymore, then sweet, I didn't buy the deck. Um, which may, I mean, that's just how I am, but I also play Arena. So I don't know what the regular paper player would feel like. Um,
Yeah,
but
it feels. I'm not totally sure um, what data they have because everything I've ever heard about standard is like, man, it's just stale. It's the same cards all the time. Uh, and this doesn't it, like obviously doesn't address that. So it feels like you're just clearly missing the point. So they're obviously targeting people who, the people that voice their opinions in the community are the people who already play standard. They're obviously hearing from people who do not play standard, and so the messages feel like discordant.
mhm.
Um, I will say it comes at like so something we mentioned about Pro Tour March of the Machine. I was shocked, shocked as all hell that only 5 of the top 8 decks played Fable of the Mirror. I know that sounds like a lot to some people, and people will complain about that. And people will
Mhm.
say half the top 8 is Rakdos midrange. I have to tell you something, that is not a dominant performance. We have seen so much worse than that in standard recently. Like Oko, obviously.
Mhm.
Like the Smuggler's Copter era, when the Omnath Adventures stuff, like that is not that bad. And I think it is misrepresentative of how dominant Fable of the Mirror Breaker actually is. That it was only half the decks were Rakdos midrange, and only 5 of the 8 decks played it. That I'm worried that gives Wizards like some hope to be like, oh, we don't have to ban it.
Mm-hmm. And this is the classic thing. Like that happens all the time, where it's like we're so close, and then like somebody wins the top 8 with like a different deck, or sorry, they win the tournament with like a deck that doesn't have the card, and you're like,
yeah, thank God Nathan won it.
Yeah, exactly. So
with the absolute most stock
yeah.
practice list possible.
But yeah, it's like that. You're rooting for the underdog deck that's like is fighting against the big dog. But then if they win, you know that the card you want banned won't get banned. So like you kind of want the opposite. I did have, before we go on a beer break, because I do want to move on to the next thing. I did want to say to you that there are some things people have talked about of different ways to deal with standard. Now, these obviously are more interesting to me and possibly to you because we're in franchise players, and so they wouldn't be as confusing to us as opposed to new players who wouldn't understand. But what do you think about standard that always has 8 sets? So that means that always and only, has 8 sets. So every time you are like, we go into a new set, you drop the oldest one. And so every time we're moving around our circle throughout the year, we get to like get rid of the oldest set and see what opens up. And we have like 3 months to build, 3 to 4 months to build new decks.
Yeah. Personally, love it. Like, this is another thing that I didn't mention yet. Rotation is one of my favorite, like as far as Magic times goes, rotation is one of my favorite times of year. Because there are so many cards I want to try that just get like absolutely obliterated by some sort of stupid card that exists, basically. And so when it's rotation, it's like, oh, I don't have to worry about whatever Alrund's Epiphany anymore. So I can actually play this card. So the fact that, I mean, rotation's not happening less often, but I mean, other than it's not happening right
this
away.
year, but sure.
But it is sort of is. It's less significant every time instead of half this format
card
leaving. It's a third of the format leaving. So it's going to be way less impactful. And that's kind of a bummer to me. So the like eternal rotation is something that if you'd asked me years ago when they moved away from the block format, I said this was coming. I was like, this is what they're eyeing, is a better standard format that can drop one set at a time, because the only reason standard works the way it does now is because they had blocks. They had to drop blocks all at once. Otherwise, it's kind of dumb, and it's just stupid. Too much a design, like it's a weird design constraint on themselves that it's like these have to be individually powerful, synergize with those, but like can't be totally
like no one wants to just have Dragons of Tarkir without like cons,
yeah, exactly right. There was one big set and like two, it made no sense. And that's what the genesis of standard was. We had blocks the whole year was a theme. It was all the same thing, and so we dropped one year at a time. And so when we moved to every Magic set as its own thing, I was like, oh, they're going to drop each thing at a time. That's awesome. And I look forward to that. And things can still be around for 2 years, right? Like they can still be around for 8 Magic sets before they get dropped. It's not like it's just we're getting rid of the weird thing where certain sets are around longer than other sets.
Which is like, especially the summer set, or like for a long time the core sets were just kind of like, oh, they're just there, and they're the last afterthought of whatever.
Right. If someone doesn't play Magic, I explain standard as the past 2 years worth of cards. It's not really true because
Yeah, that is actually confusing.
yeah.
Because when I was starting, like when I was playing, it was like Type 2 and Type 1.5 and extended and things like that. But like people would say, like, yeah, it's just the past 2 years.
That's the
And
easiest way to explain it to someone who's not ensconced in the Magic
if I am hearing it from that, like somebody says that, I would literally go back and be like, well, what was the oldest set 2 years ago? And then
Mhm.
I wouldn't think, oh, it has to be, but it has to be in September or whatever because we get extra. I would literally just think,
Right.
oh, it just churns all the time, because that would be super fun. Like, it would be so nice to see if there's certain sets that like you'd only get hosed if you're like next to a set. Like maybe Strixhaven could do something if it didn't have call time, like always with it. Like if there was at least a 3 month period where Strixhaven was alone, then like
They could do so
maybe,
much with that in terms of
yeah,
designing things in adjacent sets
right.
that, yeah, they'll be
Eh,
around once, and then when that set comes out, it hoses it for a bit, and then the original set's gone, and then the other set takes new meaning. Like,
mhm.
yeah,
So it seems really interesting to me. But obviously, like to your, I do want another beer, and I do want to move on to the next thing. But to what you
yeah,
said before is that like Wizards want people to buy more cards, and people want to have an interesting standard format, as well as like a big thing is they want to make sure that they don't have to like buy new decks all the time. So those are kind of competing issues where like the player base wants to make sure they have a deck that they can play for a long time. Wizards wants them to play different decks all the time. Um, but I think a eternal rotation sounds so much better than the 3 year thing. But
for sure.
that's just me.
The one
Anyway,
thing, the one thing I wanted to say before we head to the beer break is I saw a comment. I think it was on the Twitch of uh like the stream, the Pro
mhm.
Tour stream when they released this news, and the comment was just that this standard season will now officially be forever known as the Fable of the Mirror Match. And I was just like, that's so simple, but it's so beautiful. It's just like,
Eloquent.
yeah.
Fable of the Mirror Match.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Unless we get a ban, break the mirror, please, please.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Be the mirror breaker, wizards. Be
yeah,
the mirror
you
breaker.
can do it. Keek the cheeky. Anyway, let's go to a beer break because
Kick the cheeky.
I
I
said,
like that.
yeah.
I know about like it.
Anyway, I finished my beer, so let's go to a beer break and grab some more beers and get on to the next
Sure.
topic. This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
That's right. You're already supporting the show just by listening, but if you want to support the show even more, Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on your favorite co-host by either buying me a beer
Or buying me a beer. So go to patreon.com/arena regulars to vote on your favorite host.
or if you'd rather support us with deck lists, likes, and comments rather than sending us beers, you can do that too. Best way to do that is to join our Discord channel. The link is in the show notes.
It's right down there, but right up here, I've got another beer for us. It is called
Ooh,
Vor. It is a dry hopped sour at 5% from Little Beasts. And it's got this little dude who's like, he's got his rain boots. He's like about to fall in a puddle or something. Um, this actually reminds me, I'm going to open it because I really want to drink it. But as I do that, did you ever read
oh
the
no.
graphic novel
I'm going to
Bone?
stop you right there.
Okay.
No.
All right. So, not a big graphic novel reader, I guess, as a teen. You
I
weren't?
can say I've never read a graphic novel.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in junior high, I was quite into them. And this
Mhm.
character, if you're watching the video, you can see he reminds me of the graphic novel Bone, which was it was a great read. Which actually I've never finished. I just like bought the first one and read it a million times and have like read a few. But anyway, they were
But he,
creatures. Sorry.
I was just going to say he's the logo for the brewery, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. He's a little beast. I guess his name's Vor.
There we go.
There we
We
go.
learned something about little beasts today.
Yeah. But he does give me some bone vibes that the enemies look like this, but they're also funny and cute. Um,
Okay. He looks like a little black yeti or something. I don't know.
yeah, something like that. With horns, maybe a devil yeti. Who
Oh.
knows? Anyway, mm, Jeff, we have some more things to talk about and some more ways that magic has been changed forever, which is March of the Machine Aftermath with our
Mhm.
50 card set. I don't really have a ton to say about the actual cards, to be honest, um, of the set, because I was promised like an epilogue. And for the most part, there's a lot of things that don't seem to give me a lot of information about characters and what happens, or seemingly useless information about characters that I didn't really need to know. But um,
Yeah. So part of me was really excited about this because back in the day when I first interacted with Magic, there was this aspect of cards had like a little bit of flavor text, but there was a legendary card that was, it had this flavor text, and that was the only way you got to experience the story. And it made the world feel huge and big, and like there's flavor text for things that aren't even cards that are
mhm,
quotes on other cards, and you were like, oh man, who is this person?
yeah,
And like it promised this like grand world. And so I was kind of excited about a set that presumably was supposed to do the same thing. It's like, we're going to tell you a great story only through the cards. Um, I also feel like it didn't really deliver that for me personally.
mhm.
But I may have set my expectations too high to like the time when I was blown away as a kid.
For
Like
sure. And
will I ever
that's,
get that same wonder and excitement? Probably no matter what they did, I probably wouldn't have got that. But
yeah, I think that like just to be fair, for like most everything, you should probably just try not to have your childlike wonder come back, because that's extremely difficult and like not
you know what though?
flipping.
I have a kid who's almost one. So in a few years, I'll just start showing him stuff and being like,
Yeah,
does he react? How does he react? Was
yeah,
this
that's
cool or
true.
not? Yeah.
Hopefully, the things that have a deep connection with you or like interest with you is also something that makes your kid also feel deep, emotional things. And they won't just make fun of you, but
No, he'll make fun of me. There's no
yeah.
question about that.
um, but anyway, this set was also accompanied by two short stories with it to kind of wrap up everything that happened after March of the Machine. So if you want to know more about the March of the Machine story, you should check out our Drunken Vorthos episodes. They're a few weeks ago that will explain everything that happened. But the end of it, we do kind of owe everyone a little cap. Now, this isn't a Drunken Vorthos episode. And luckily, you don't really need to know anything that happened in either of these stories, because they were, how you say, not super necessary.
I mean, you were talking about like not needing to know anything that happened, and I was like, oh wait, did something happen in those stories that I
Yeah,
read? Because
no.
maybe I read different stories.
Yeah, no, they were disappointing. One was revolving around Nissa, and the other one was revolving around Nahiri. The most important thing you need to know, and something that we learned fairly soon, and you could also learn it from the cards, is fairly obvious, is that um, almost all of the planeswalkers have lost their sparks.
Mhm.
So they are now legendary creatures. Now, we already knew this with the likes of like Karn had gifted his spark to Ajani while trying to heal him and get him de-Phyrexianized. But a lot of the cards in, I mean, it's kind of funny because it's like there's a mix between planeswalkers that are now legendary creatures and legendary creatures that are still legendary creatures, which is funny.
Yeah.
But
And planeswalkers that are still planeswalkers. None of them are in this
yes,
set, but
but
some of them, not all
in
of
this
them,
story,
turn. Yeah.
specifically, Chandra still has her spark, and Ajani still has his spark, and those are really
Well, he
good.
has Venser Spark
He
now,
has
I guess.
Venser spark that was in Karn spark, but
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. Um, but besides that, everyone else is just a legendary creature. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
like Nahiri, Nissa is a legendary creature, Teferi, Karn, and all the cards we're seeing in this is like Narset, Obnixilis, Sarkin, Samut, Tyvar. Honestly, I think of all these, I feel the worst for Samut because Samut was a legendary creature and then became a planeswalker and is now back a
Yeah.
legendary creature. Very sad. Very sad.
Yeah.
um,
As far as the stories go, nothing really happens. It's just like Nissa's stuck in Zalfir, Nahiri is stuck in Zendikar. You'd think it would mostly be them like trying to live with what they did. It's kind of mentioned briefly, but actually they're both kind of whiny stories. The first one is about Nissa being super whiny about Chandra, actually, which I didn't really care for. Um, and then the second one was Nahiri. I mean, oh, surprise, surprise. Nahiri was being super whiny. Um, and then like Ajani even comes and says, "Hey, Nahiri, like we've both been through some shit. We were Phyrexians who tried to take over our own worlds. Like we should team up and try to heal stuff." And she's like, you're you're just here to kill me or something. Like screw you. And like, I don't know. It was the
I
same exact
actually,
thing she did with Soren. And I was just like, it's just like whiny Nahiri again, even though she's like a million years old.
I
The
actually,
like teenage angst Nahiri.
I liked that part where like she slowly is talking herself into why she thinks that he killed all the other planeswalkers, and that's why they're not planeswalkers anymore. Like Luca died, and
None of that made
Tamio.
any sense. Johnny shows
No,
up. He's like, you know they're all dead, right? And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, Tamio, Luca,
Jace,
probably these
Vraska,
other
yeah.
two, but we don't know. Not Nissa, not you. And you're like, okay, so what? Two out of the seven are
Hmm.
dead. That's not. They're all dead. Johnny. Like,
Well, he to be fair, he did,
most
yeah.
people are not dead.
But I did like how they were kind of having Nahiri have like we get to be in her mind as she slowly realizes, or in her,
Yeah, but they set it up that way where
yeah.
Johnny said something that is makes no sense just to set up her being suspicious of him later.
Well, he was saying that Tamio and Luca are dead. That's true, and then Jason Vraska are presumed dead. They just don't know where
No,
their
but he
bodies are.
led with, everyone else is dead that did this. And then he was like, Luca and Tamio.
Sure. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
he's like, probably these other two. And then Nahiri was like, what about Nissa? He's like, well, no, not Nissa. And not me. And not you. And, you know, realistically, knowing the writers, probably not Jace or Vraska either,
It's
actually.
true. Also, like it was strange because like Johnny comes and expects that Nahiri still has her spark without really asking, and it's
But he
like,
could
well,
sense it because
oh,
she
because she's
had
holding it in her hand with
she's
the
holding the
Hedron.
stone. Yeah.
But like, anyway, she blows it up.
Thanks.
It doesn't
Nothing
really
actually
matter.
happens in the story.
Yes.
She
Um,
starts unable to planeswalk. She ends unable to planeswalk, but pissed off.
yeah.
That's the story.
We don't really need to get into it because I know that me and Jeff are going to talk way too much about stupid details that don't matter. What you need to know is that most of the planeswalkers are no longer planeswalkers. However, all of the planes are basically linked between different omen paths. So omen paths are things that linked the different realms in Kaldheim. And because of everything that happened, now omen paths are just part of magic, and anyone can find different omen paths to different planes. So, like the people on Zalfir can find an omen path to Zendikar, and you can just walk through them, and it's just like a thing that they're finding. But they're kind of sporadic and erratic, and you don't really, there isn't like a great map. Like no one really knows where they are, like where they go, except for Nissa can stand outside of one and thinks she hears Zendikar. Like, okay. Um, they can close at any time and they can open at any time. So basically, the writers can do whatever the fuck they want. Um,
Yeah, yeah. The one thing that was interesting about the two stories is first one ends with Nissa being sure that even though she's not a planeswalker, she can still get back to Zendikar. The second one ends with Nahiri saying, any outsiders to Zendikar will feel my wrath. Like, no planeswalkers will ever come to Zendikar again.
yeah. And basically, specifically, that she wants to kill like all planeswalkers, which lucky for them, most of them are not planeswalkers anymore. So,
So they've built up an inherent conflict of Nissa trying to go to Zendikar, and Nahiri is going to be like, yo, fuck you.
yeah. Which this, we should honestly go back and do like Zendikar Rising, Drunken Vorthos, because a lot of that was happening in that story. Um, but is it really worth it? I don't really know. We'll have to find out.
Yeah.
Probably not. They don't have enough rogues in that story for us to care about it.
No rogues.
Yeah,
Never mind then.
dumb.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how Magic has really changed as far as story wise.
Yeah, which I think is what Mark Rosewater was referring to.
Yes, this is really what he meant. It also shows that on the packaging for the Wilds of Eldraine, Ashiok is there, which kind of proves that, like, yes, planeswalkers can't just go wherever they want now, but they can also just like walk around. So, like, previously, yes, Ashiok was a planeswalker, but we didn't really get Ashiok on other places besides Theros. Now we get to have legendary creatures go all over the place because everyone will be everywhere whenever they want.
I suppose we don't know for sure that Ashiok lost their spark.
That is true. I'm assuming, but
like I don't know why Chandra would be the only one who doesn't. They've left themselves the opportunity to have other planeswalkers that didn't.
So this is the weird thing. That's like, why did you pick Chandra to keep her spark? Because we have so many cards of her. Like, is it because you want to continue having Chandra planeswalkers so you can have a Chandra planeswalker deck? Is that the reason? Or like, I'm not complete. Like, I know that they've tied a lot of like their,
like, clearly the point of this
story
was
to
a bit
her.
of a culling if they had too
Yeah.
many planeswalker characters. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm still of the opinion they should have just killed some of them off.
Yeah.
But this is
Well,
all right. This is the lame way to do it.
yes. Because they missed their chance in War of the Spark to kill enough planeswalkers. And then in March of the Machine, they didn't kill enough characters. So they're like, you know what? They're just regular creatures now. You're like,
right.
oh, I'm fine with this. However, spoiler alert, I'm fairly positive this is a very sneaky ploy to just get more commanders, like
Right.
this is for commander. Like everybody, this is for commander.
Though, or is it explicit?
It's what I do like though, which this is not really a part of this, but like on Twitter and like in the Magic community, Oathbreaker has become like it was like revving up. Like people were getting really excited about Oathbreaker, talking about their Oathbreaker decks. And if you don't know, Oathbreaker is like I'm pretty sure it's a 60 card format where you have
like spells are commanders or something.
Yeah, so you have one planeswalker as your commander, and then you have a signature spell that planeswalker can cast, and they're both, the signature spell has to be part of your planeswalker's identity. But the point is that your commander is a planeswalker, and it can be any
inspired by legendary spells, right? Around that time.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah. But people are getting really excited, like, oh, this is so cool. Let's play Oathbreaker. And now they're like, fuck that. No, planeswalkers. And so it just makes me laugh that because I was even thinking like, oh, Oathbreaker could be kind of fun. That's funny. And then they're like, nobody's a planeswalker anymore. Like there's a handful. So I'm wondering, does that mean that like we will have less planeswalker cards per set? Like in Wilds of Eldraine, will we still have 3? I know we have Will and Rowan, but like I don't know if they share a spark. Did they both lose it? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell, I suppose. Yeah. I wonder if, like, Are we just not going to have planeswalkers unless Chandra's in the set, kind of thing? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm kind of down with we don't need like there's a lot of times where like we don't need three planeswalkers in this set. Like we don't
Yeah,
need.
usually, and recent years they've kind of been making them crappy on purpose or
Mhm.
very, very specific as like ways because they're naturally powerful cards, just like the design, the
Yeah,
way a planeswalker works,
in the
it's
game it's just
inherently powerful.
mhm.
So it's like they have to make them very specific or kind of crappy. Uh, if that's what they're doing, why are they working so hard to make so many planeswalkers and they're just going to
Exactly.
intentionally make most of them suck when the community would probably prefer a legendary creature that sucks in that spot
Hmm.
anyways, or sucks for you know formats that I play. um and planeswalkers, I guess, are generally worse in commander because there's so many more people that can attack them.
Yeah, powerful planeswalkers, yeah, tend to be worse. So
um,
sometimes, well, it doesn't really matter, but yes. And also, you can have them as your commander, which is, obviously, commander players want as many of them as possible, right? Commander players, right? You want every legendary you can possibly find.
right.
That's kind of a. I don't think that
They
that's
love
true.
that.
No, they.
um
I'm pretty sure they want less legendary creatures. um, but
Wizards was like, hey, we heard you like legendaries, so we put legendaries on your legendaries and made them legendary.
yeah, we made
Commander players are like,
yeah,
whoa.
every set now the uncommon creature is going to be legendary, and then
Yeah.
this is also going to be legendary. Look at these like two color legendary cards all over the place. Oh my god, there's so many. um
And they're very prescriptive now, right? It's like,
yeah,
here's what you should do if I'm your commander.
yeah,
Yes.
which has also pushed me away from that format. But that's the important thing that happened. So that's the thing.
It's just so, in terms of the cards, in terms of standard,
Yes,
there are some cards that I like here. So let's talk about a few of
the
them.
one card that you like. I know.
There's a couple of cards that I
Okay,
like.
well, do you want to start with the card that's like an obvious Jeff card, or do you want to like the card that's like I read it and I was like, oh my god, like did Jeff make this card? Maybe
Okay.
not. Maybe you don't actually like this card, but it made me think of you immediately. So
All right. Well, there is actually one single card in this
okay,
set that is already in my collection. I've crafted two of them.
okay,
I've play tested
okay.
deck with them, and I love it. So the
Yeah.
card that I have in my collection is Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin.
Trash, unplayable trash. No, I love it. This is exactly
This
the card.
card's
Yeah, this is
this
the card I was
card's the
talking about.
truth.
Yeah,
Okay. So let me read it.
yeah.
It's 2 black red for a legendary demon, 4/3 flying trample or flample.
Hmm.
Whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly one life, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then exile the top card of your library until your next end step. You may play that card. All right, so this card has actually revitalized, in my opinion, the viability of Anvil in
Hmm.
Standard without Atraxa. So far I've been playing Vitraxa, which is
Hmm.
uh, thank you to our Discord channel for
Hmm.
that name.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been like the Anvil deck with the VAT and Atraxa as like ways to go big because there just wasn't quite enough there. With the most recent set reprinting Village Rites and calling it something else, and now this giving us Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. I've now been testing a new version that doesn't even have to do those shenanigans. Um, and this card is insane because now, if this card's in play, tapping your anvil draws you a card. The thing to note about this card, which I didn't fully appreciate until playing it, is contrary to recent design decisions,
Mm-hmm.
this is allowed to activate more than once per turn.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little ridiculous, actually. There was a game I was playing where I had a ton of 1/1s on the board, as as
Happens. Sure.
as tends to happen in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew my opponent was going to wipe the board. And I still slapped this onto the battlefield because I had 2 anvils in play. And so I knew that I was going to draw at least 2 more cards, essentially, off this because this is until your next end step. So you play this. On your end step, you tap the anvil. So I had 2 anvils in play. I play this. On my end step, I sack one of my artifacts to the anvil, creates 2 more because I have 2 anvils. Then I pass the turn to them. When they actually commit to the wrath, I sack another artifact to my anvil, draw another card off this. So it's essentially like I win the game, and if you have a wrath, I'm going to draw multiple cards off it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing to note, if I attack with 6/1/1s, my opponent loses 6 life. They don't lose 1 life 6 times. So this doesn't go ridiculous with that. But it triggers off Anvil. It triggers off Voldaren Epicure, one of my favorites.
Okay, yeah.
And it triggers off if you happen to be playing a certain other card named Ob Nixilis, a devil token for some reason. It'll trigger off that. Or you just attack with a single 1/1, triggers off that. There's a ton of ways in the Anvil deck to trigger this thing. This thing is a house. I love that you could just play it and start drawing off it immediately with the like end step trick. Yeah, this guy's the real deal.
Does this also trigger off of your opponent's pain lands?
Yep. Yeah,
Awesome.
if they lose a single life. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's a fun addition to a standard that has all the pain lands too. Um, this is the only
Didn't
card.
even realize that because that hasn't come up yet, but
Yeah.
even more excited.
Well, it'll be really exciting when your opponent doesn't realize it, and then they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
fuck."
And I am still in silver tier, so
Yeah, so it might happen. Though to be fair, by the time you're at 4 mana, usually you don't have to use them nearly as much.
I just love that you can slap this down on 4 because so many 4 drops
Mhm.
like this, you need to wait until you have something in the bag. And this is like, I might already have it in the bag.
Mhm. Yeah, like all your early plays are the stuff that you can, like your anvils and everything.
Yeah.
Super cool. Like of everything in this like mini little set, that's the one that I was most excited about, and I knew that you would really like it. So I
Yeah, it's
loved.
amazing.
I was like, oh, this is Jeff.
And
This is
Anvil is always
100%.
like, it's always hungry for a 4 drop that's actually good. Like I used to
Mhm.
play, way, way back in the day. Used to play either the Planeswalker that made the 2 devils, I forget her name, from
Right. Yeah.
Forgotten Realms, the
Mhm.
angel, the
Thing.
D&D angel.
Zariel or something.
Zariel, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's it. Or the dragon from Kaldheim that would eat things and sack. It was really hard to deal with, and
Hmm.
when it attacked, it got bigger and would sack stuff and would exile stuff from your opponent's graveyard, get indestructible. That thing was awesome. But
Oh, right.
yeah, so this card gives me hope that even after Fable is banned, Anvil could still be a thing.
Mm. Yeah. I like it. Oh man. Um, Probably my favorite card that's been printed for this set is Training Grounds. Have you heard of it? It's
Oh, what is that, a new card?
no. It's a reprint.
No. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. This set
Hmm.
it's 50 cards, but they thought one of them should be a reprint.
Hmm.
So there's only
Makes sense.
49 new cards. Yeah, just for story wise, because it makes sense that after the war everyone needs to train back up for the next crisis. I guess.
Okay, but like what plane was it specifically tied to? Like what story is it really
Yeah,
telling?
yeah. There's like a wizard and then like a robot and also like a sword in it. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
probably a plane that has some of those things
Yeah,
in
like
it.
Phyrexia attacked it
Yeah,
and it has magic and
and
combat.
yeah. So something. It's flavorful.
Yeah,
Trust me.
cool.
Um,
Makes sense.
anyway, yeah, I don't understand why they put a reprint in this set. I mean,
To
we were
sell
talking,
it.
yeah, to sell it. Yeah, Jeff was talking. We were talking about this at the beer break, but um, yeah, Training Grounds is a card, so now it's in standard. If you don't know what it does, it makes activated abilities creatures you control cost 2 colorless less to activate. Um, so okay, it's a single blue enchantment. Um, I don't know. Is this the card that you want to open so you have a Training Grounds? I maybe
If you play Commander, maybe.
yeah.
Uh,
Previously,
this
Training
card, this is the
Grounds,
type of card that's never going to be good in Standard. An
yeah,
enchantment that makes activated abilities cost two
two
colorless less.
less.
Like, no,
No, no.
the format will never be slow enough for that.
Yeah. Also, this is like a super old card. I don't know. It's just so bizarre of all the weird things. But I did want to say like if we're being honest, like actual like cards that are I don't know flavorful. The
Mm.
one that like this card could be interesting in standard. I don't know if like it'll actually get there or like this could be a win condition. Not really a win condition, but like help you do something. But like Spark Rupture, which is 2 and a white for an enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and then each planeswalker with one or more loyalty counters on it loses all abilities and becomes a creature with power and toughness equal to the number of loyalty counters on it.
Mhm.
Um, so basically, just turns all your planeswalkers into creatures, and they can attack your opponent. Which, or vice versa, you can turn your opponent's planeswalkers into creatures and then wipe the board or farewell, um, which you haven't been able to do. So it also replaces itself. So,
Yeah,
but as
this
as
card I have no idea how to evaluate. It
it's
seems tough to warrant the inclusion at 3 mana for this,
yes,
but like it does something so different than anything I've ever seen that like,
it's so
well,
interesting. Like because like this is a lot of times we've seen
Gideon's everything.
it Gideon's everything, except for it can't do anything else. Um, but it's flavorful, obviously, because it explains very succinctly that like planeswalkers lost their spark. Um,
Mhm.
we already have a card called D Spark, so they could do that one. Um,
Right.
but um, but also it's very nice in white because white does this ability with enchantments a lot of the time. It like animates enchantments. Um, so or not a lot of the time, but
This
it
could have
has
been
in the
the
past.
desparkening,
The desparkening.
the great desparkening.
um, but yeah, this the card I think that I'll probably remember from the set the most, just because it actually like reminds me. Oh yeah, that was what happened in that set and that story. There is even a card that specifically explained it. So cool.
Yeah. For me, quick shout out to Tyvar, the
Hmm.
bellicose. Mostly because this taught me a new word. I don't know how to pronounce it because I've only read it on this card. But bellicose is someone like looking for a fight, or
Oh, okay.
like I think it might have the same root as belligerent or something like that. But
Interesting.
I did look up this word. I was like, is that a thing? What is that? Um, it's a real word, and it kind of means like, yeah, someone who's like in your face looking for a fight kind of thing.
Hmm.
Don't love the card that much, but I have appreciated Tyvar cards in the past.
Yeah. He's very elf centric. So he's like he kind of went back to what his old card was. Not so
Yeah.
much the one that you have loved so dearly.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah.
But I do really like Nissa's new card.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's Nissa Resurgent Animus, tuna green for 3/3 landfall. So it has like a mini Omnath thing going on here. So it
Hmm.
has Lotus Cobra. So whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. And it has then if this is the second time this is resolved, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or elemental card. Put that in your hand. The rest on the bottom. Um, this is a pretty cool card. 3/3 for 3, Lotus Cobra. I don't think is too far outside the realm of playability. Like in standard, it's probably a little lackluster.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not that bad. Like it's kind of a more resilient Lotus Cobra, but obviously a 2-drop mana creator is better than a 3-drop mana creator. The second ability I find really interesting because you can do the elf thing. You can make your Tyvar Nissa
Hmm.
elf deck, and this is just like a Lotus Cobra elf fetcher kind of crazy thing. Or you could do the thing where um, you don't play too many Nissas, but then you have one other elemental or elf in your deck, and this will find it for you.
Hmm.
So you could do I don't know, like what's that big elemental that people used to love reanimating before they printed
Oh,
real reanimator targets?
yeah, the green
Uh,
one.
yeah, City or no, sorry,
Titan of Industry?
Titan of Industry. Yeah, like you could do that kind of thing, and you'd have to pair this with something that can play multiple
I mean,
lands. Like
well,
maybe if there was some sort of soldier riding a giant frog that let you play more than one land in a turn.
wow. Well, so Thalia and the Gitrog monster, that's a good idea because I didn't go straight to that. I honestly went straight to like the like New Capenna Sacklands was
Mm,
like the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's also
play a
an
couple of
option
these.
to double trigger, right? Like the best
Mhm.
fetch lands we have available to us in
Yeah,
standard.
but
Uh, yeah, at first I just kind of like auto corrected it to one of those look at the top five. And I was like, no, I hate this. When I
mhm.
realized it could like tutor something in particular, I got really excited. And then when I realized it's probably going to hit other copies of itself, I got bumped out. So I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know where I land on this card. I wish it just said like elemental. Um,
yeah, but I like that it says elf too because I like having the like.
Yeah, at first I was like, elf makes sense. It's finding other elves. Elemental makes sense. She's like an elementalist. Like, I like the flavor here. She even accidentally summons an elemental in the story.
Mhm.
Um, but it's like a real buzzkill that she's probably going to find other copies of herself
Of
some amount of
herself.
the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you're going that, I didn't really think about that aspect, like the trying to tutor thing, because you're not cheating it into play really. But I do like that. Also, we do have Omnath, so you could do this like
good. Yeah, you could go for
three
on
into
that.
four, but like uh, the the one we have right now cares a little bit less about lands really. Um, but yeah, cool card.
I wish
Another,
they'd found a way for it not to tutor itself. Like I know it's hard with the legendary creature because you can't say like non Nissa or whatever.
I mean, you could, you
But
just don't have enough words. But
for elf or elemental card that is not called Nissa, comma research animist.
mhm.
You know what I mean?
They could also just say Anissa. No, because this isn't Anissa Planeswalker, so it doesn't even have a
Right.
subtype
So now that
Nissa.
it's a creature, they can't just do that. So,
Wow, that's so weird. So it's not even. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Um. Anyway, still cool. I like it. Um. I like that it's kind of like mid pack. I like that
yeah.
the Planeswalkers are like legendary creatures that are like okay, like you know.
Yeah, this one's like neat and had potential, but probably never gonna play with or against this card ever
But I would be
because of that
but it would be really
limitation.
sweet if you did because it is a
Yeah,
cool card and I do like
right.
it.
But I'm not going to spend a mythic wild
No,
card on
no,
it.
no, 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 no. Another card I probably won't spend any wild cards on, but I am really happy that they printed is very thematic and story focused. So Arnie Metalbrow. It's it's 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, human berserker, and it says whenever a creature you control attacks or a creature enters the battlefield under your control attacking, you may pay 1 and a red, and if you do, you may put a creature card with mana value less than that creature's mana value from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So it kind of like has this weird thing in your hand where like if you can set up like a 2 and a 1, I guess, Arnie attacks, you pay 2, you play the 2, and then for that one you get to pay another 2, and you play the 1.
It's quite the dream it's trying to sell you here.
It really is. But that's not why I like it. Like it has like the sneak attack fun creature sneak attack thing, which is kind of cool, but also like not the reason sneak attack's good, because sneak attack you can put whatever the fuck you want into play. It's because Arna. So this, I don't know, did they jump the shark with this joke? It kind of feels like they did, but like Arna, Broken Brow from Kaldheim, headbutted a troll, and it's horn? It's horn is in his head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think
Tooth.
it's horn or
Horn
tusk
or tooth
or whatever.
or tusk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has a tusk or a horn, I can't remember, embedded into his skull, and he's alive. And he tells that story, and that was like the cool thing. This is now he headbutted another thing, and it was a Phyrexian, and that's tusk or horn got ripped off and is also stuck in his skull. So now he has 2 things sticking out of his head. So it is funny, but like I don't know how. Like before, it seemed really badass and also hilarious, but badass. Now it feels a little like just dipping into that well again. Like
for sure, I still enjoyed it, but it's still like, did he not get Phyrexianized when this happened? Did he do it at the exact time when
they
died?
They
got did he do it after they got deactivated or something? Because that's less impressive.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the same as Tyvar jumping in and killing the coma after it like went limp.
so you know what I learned? He didn't kill coma.
Oh. What happened?
The infect guy before infect guy, but from Kaldheim that does like poison, and if you get
Fang the Finn.
That guy killed coma.
Oh.
Tyvar killed a big Phyrexian snake.
So that wasn't coma?
No. Apparently, if you read like the Kaldheim specific story,
it says
coma does get Phyrexianized, but it's not the one that fights Tyvar. He fights Finn. They just like, it's just a big snake. It was so disappointing.
That's so disappointing.
Like, why?
Oh my god. Anyway, Jeff, I almost feel like this episode has been a little disappointing, just with like things happening, stuff we've been talking about.
So many confusing things. Because like, here's the thing: there's no 2 ways about this. This edition card, whatever you want to call it, it's weak.
Yeah,
for standard, or anything beyond standard. For commander, maybe it's great, but like this is in terms of shaking up standard, it's super weak. Pretty much none of these cards are going to do anything. So the timing of all this is super weird, because when I saw this, I was like, okay, so the plan is we do the Pro Tour, we are worried that standard gets solved too quickly, so we're going to throw out a little shake up after the Pro Tour so nobody knows what the best deck to play is. Nothing here is going to disturb red-black as the best deck.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing here is going to do anything about that.
The most exciting card is a card that is red-black. It's not that deck, but it would keep those colors.
It brings up a different red-black deck that might compete. But then they also, right before this is released, make this big standard shakeup. So this is the first time standard's gonna be around a long while.
Hmm.
and they release this weird change. And so it just ends up being like, what was the point of this set? Um,
I don't know.
and the stories were like not really about any of this at all.
No, they were about characters that we kind of knew about. I don't know. I'm very confused. Um, I also don't see why you would like add like in my mind, all of the legendary creatures should just be planeswalkers or old planeswalkers. I don't know why you left like Rocco Street Chef. Like what is he doing? I don't care about that character. Like I don't understand. Like
I
maybe there's somebody
mean,
who really likes them, but
maybe
like
like okay, Nashi Moon's Legacy is kind of like Tamio's story, uh, the continuation of
finished.
Tamio's story.
Sure.
Niv Mizzet, people like Niv Mizzet, I guess. So Niv Mizzet's there. Um, like there's some that okay, Pia, whatever.
Sure. I guess in my mind it does feel weird going through and being like, "Oh, yeah, that like oh yeah, they used to be a planeswalker." And I'm like, "Wait, no, that character never was a planeswalker. Why am I caring about that?" No, no, no. Dianetha, I don't it doesn't matter. Jolriel,
Yeah, I
no.
had some weird ones where I'm like, Calyx is no longer a planeswalker. What a
Oh,
bummer.
yeah, what a bummer. He was a planeswalker for one set. I barely knew him.
Who the fuck is Calyx?
Yeah. Like those kinds of things. So, that's what was strange to me. I wish that it was much more focused on like, hey, yeah, planeswalkers are no longer planeswalkers. Get the picture? Like, I wish that was a bit more of a like, this is really important. Look at this thing.
It's
Like,
just like I wish it told an awesome story or provided cards that were relevant to standard.
yeah.
And it didn't really do either.
Or also like we just had like Legends of the Multiverse. Like this literally could have just been a bunch of like 50 legendary creatures, honestly. That are just like, hey, these are all the planeswalkers that are no longer planeswalkers. I would have been
Yeah.
like, they probably wouldn't have done as much or anything, but like, cool. Or majority
Yeah.
of them. I don't know.
Just left a little confused because it's like the first time they've done a mini set for standard, and then they also shake up standard like a day before its release.
And it's
And
and the
it's
release
supposed to
date's
be
kind of
story driven, and it's not
I don't
story
know.
driven really. It doesn't really tell a story. And
Besides the Kenrith
what's it
Royal Funeral, which yes, that is helpful, but that was spoiled a long time ago.
this yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that Tranquil Frillback does not give anything. Like
Super confusing.
it's a
Like
cool
that's clearly added so that when you draft this set, you might not get a good card. Because there's a slot that's going to be from this set.
yeah, but you're only gonna draft it on Arena because you can't draft it in person.
Mhm.
And this card, I don't know, does it help mono green? I'm just confused by it. Um
No, I think it's just to like have the numbers so that you don't always have an extra rare or whatever in your slot.
but I mean it is a rare. Oh, you mean like a good
A
card?
good rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
It to me it just looks like oh they just need another green card. Someone had to make up a green card.
Right. Like it doesn't even have flavor text. How could a pointless card
Yeah.
it's not a character or an event in a story driven set not have flavor text and then the card doesn't matter. Um
I don't understand.
Weird. It's almost like the actual reason for this set is to just inject a crap ton of legendaries into Commander. And it's not really to have anything to do with anything else.
Yeah. Which, like I said before, they should have just like done a better job with injecting legendaries and been more focused on, hey, all your favorite like planeswalkers that you can't ever have as your commander because they're only planeswalkers. Well, now look at this. Also, side note, Nahiri turning back into a legendary creature. Um, I mean, like I know they can't do this, but it would have been really cool if she was Stoneforge Mystic and they just brought that to standard. Like that just would have been super cool. Because it's like, oh, look at this big mighty planeswalker now goes back to their roots, which is this non-legendary creature. which is like obviously that will never happen and it can't happen.
Could they not do that though? Like, how good is Stoneforge Mystic and Standard?
I meant they can't do it in the sense that they can't print Nahiri as not Nahiri. Do you know what I mean?
They could do Nahiri, comma, Stoneforge Mystic, and then make
But that
it
would
a
very
legendary reprint.
version. Yeah. I mean, that would be cool. Because, I mean, but having a Stoneforge Mystic in your command zone
Nahiri, Mystic of the
of the
Stoneforge.
Stoneforge, forged of mystic stone. Um,
Yeah.
I guess her name is Forged in Fury, so pretty close. Um,
Yeah, except she's a billion mana and doesn't do anything.
no,
So
she has affinity for equipment. Okay, first of all.
oh
So,
yeah, I'm sorry. You have to play a crap load of equipment,
yeah.
and then this is cheap.
And then it could be 2 mana. Too
When
bad
you're
there's
sitting there getting your ass kicked because you have no creatures and a bunch of equipment, you might get to play this for cheaper.
this 5/4. Um, at least it trades with Shieldred. Anyway, um, let's Jeff. You know what? This is. I think this episode has gone on long enough with us shooting on some stuff. Um, let's. Do you have any closing thoughts? I mean, I know we kind of closed our thoughts a little bit in this last chunk, but before we go to last call,
Yeah, I think, my main thoughts about this are these cards are going to be around for a long time, and that's great.
okay, very perfect. Love it. That's yes, they will be around for a long time. Uh, let's go to last call. Let's talk about some beer. So as always, we rate our beers on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And this has nothing to do with whatever tier you are in currently. It's just a fun way to rate beers. So don't feel bad when we say that bronze beers are trash. They are horrible. You have to spit them out. You have to pour them on the ground. You piss on them afterwards because they're disgusting.
Silver beers are just kind of boring. Macro brews tend to find themselves in this category.
Gold beers are fine, but you probably won't drink them again.
Platinum are good, and you will drink these again.
Diamond beers are exceptional. You will drink these often. You buy them when you go to the LCBO or the liquor store. My apologies, and you show these to your friends.
And Mythic beers, well, is the best of the best. These are the Obnixilis Captive Kingpin of beers. Just so much better than the competition that it's the only thing worth talking about.
Yeah. Do you know which beer you're picking for this evening?
I think so.
Yeah. I think I've got mine too. So
Cool.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Rootless Tree. Whoa.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I actually like them. This was very close. Both of them.
Yeah, me too.
I'm surprised that you picked the sour, but also then, and as the words come out of my mouth, I know that it's probably because it's not always the sour that I like that you like.
Yeah, I was like, this actually doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
But they both felt very, very close. I just think that I'll just do the Patters beer first, just because
Sure.
it's something that I'm unfamiliar with, and I think it does deliver with that like nice taste, but like a lighter double, obviously. And the one thing that's bad about doubles and triples is that I can't drink a ton of them because I just get too silly. So this feels like I could.
You shouldn't.
I shouldn't. And this one's great. I really like it. Tastes really nice. Feels solid. I think they both feel kind of similar in their like tier. But
yeah, agreed.
I was.
I think it's probably just like an expectations management thing. When I was thinking like, oh, this is like a Belgian double or a Belgian triple, but a little more manageable in alcohol. I was expecting it to just
give more oomph.
Yeah, I think my like unreasonable expectation was it tastes like that. It's just not as alcoholic. And then
Hmm.
like
Obviously,
it's
it
not how the
can't.
world works.
Yeah.
Uh, everything's a
Where,
balance.
yeah, and where I didn't know anything about it, and then you told me that, I was like, oh, cool. And then I tasted it, I was like, oh, yeah, it kind of is like that. And then,
Right.
yeah,
I was like, this is gonna be the best thing
yeah,
ever.
totally.
But it was good. I enjoyed it for sure.
Hmm.
Um, whereas the dry hopped sour, I was worried just based on personal experience that this was
Hmm.
going to be an aggressive sour that maybe they like held hops somewhere near it to call it dry hopped just to like get that name out there. Because I've seen that so often where they're like,
Hmm.
oh, this is a hopped sour. It's like, well, we're just hops in the building when you made this. Like,
Hmm.
that doesn't count. But this is actually a lot more true to what I would think of when I think of a dry hopped sour
Yeah.
than I was expecting.
Yeah, it felt exactly like what I was thinking and hoping was like fairly mild in taste, not too sour, and just a little bit of hops.
Yeah.
Very easy drinking. I could drink a ton of these.
Yeah. I think they
Really
nailed that.
tasty.
It's
Yeah.
like there's the sour is light, the
Hmm.
hops is there, but light. It's just like a beer with flavor. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
with a nice little like just a little tinge. Like we don't have like the warhead candy going on, anything like that, which a
right.
lot of places like really focus their sours to be nowadays. Um, which continues to prove that Little Beasts is a really great brewery that has good.
I think I
They got a
think both of these are super drinkable.
so drinkable. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it was kind of hard because it was like I could if I cracked another like Patter's beer right after the one that we had, I was like, yeah, I could just keep going with this guy. Um,
Right.
both super solid. Both feel platinum to me.
Yeah. I think they're both
Really,
solid late platinum.
they
Yeah.
felt very very close to me. But yeah, great, awesome beers. Little Beasts, man. I'm I'm loving it. Platinum is also a good rating, everyone. If like I
Yes.
know we rate platinum a lot, but things really have to blow us out of the water. And we said this last week, but they're coming. We have some crazy beers coming
Yeah.
up, so um, just wait on the really funky
Actually,
ones.
we've pretty much left ourselves with only
Only
crazy
funky
beers.
ones. So stay tuned for that next week. But with that, Jeff, let's go to closing time. So, as always, you can find us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You may find us on MTG Arena itself. We have a username, MTG. Nope, Arena Regulars Podcast.
That's right. Though MTG would be a good name to start off.
Yeah. We didn't get that one. It was
No,
taken.
it was taken already.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is ZeulBerg on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place is on the Discord channel. I go by at regular Jeff. If you ever want to find my latest build of a ridiculous sacrifice deck, I got you.
Yeah, just ask because sometimes we forget to post things on there. So if you tag us,
Just
we'll
just
find it.
at me.
Yeah,
Come
at
at
him.
me.
Yeah, come at him. Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review there. Go to our YouTube channel. Like, comment. We love to hear all your feedback. It means a lot to us, and it helps grow the channel. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that this era of Standard will forever be known as the fable of the mirror match.
Good night. All right, that's fine.